Hello, and welcome back to JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, the one and only Powerpuff Girls / JoJo's Bizarre Adventure recap and discussion podcast. I'm Raven.
And I'm Allison.
Today we are going to be discussing the next two episodes of Phantom Blood, which are Youth with Dio and Overdrive. I don't think there's any new PPG or JoJo news, but one little thing I want to talk about before we majorly get into the podcast is why I picked PPG and JoJo to talk about together. Part of it is because I did want the punny title, I admit, but also I kind of see a lot of parallels between the Powerpuff Girls and MoJo's relationship and Dio's with the Joestars. Dio and MoJo Jojo both took advantage of the kindness of a single father to gain power. Both became major rivals and antagonists to the father's children. Both sort of created their own rivals in a way, because I don't think Jojo would have gone about that kind of stuff were it not for Dio. And both actions have repercussions that cast a shadow over their respective series. So I just feel like MoJo Jojo and Dio are kind of a bit alike in that way. Not in every respect. Obviously, Dio doesn't repeat what he says 3 times. And MoJo has turned people into dogs, but he's never harmed dogs.
Yeah, MoJo's not evil vampire.
Yeah.
He's a little more of he's a bad guy, but he's kind of silly and he can be beaten. Whereas at this point, Dio seems unbeatable.
Yeah.
Want me to start?
Yeah, if you want to start talking about your episode.
Okay, so Youth with Dio. JoJo says he has proof of the poisoning. He has come back with an antidote and says he must turn Dio in. Dio asks to turn himself in. Dio is trying to distract so the mask and knife can do their work. Robert E.O. Speedwagon appears and says he spots that Dio is pure evil. He has brought the Asian apothecary as witness, but JoJo's father has heard everything. Dio wants to be handcuffed by JoJo. Dio says he forsakes the human condition and presents the mask. He stabs Mr. Joestar and puts on the mask. The police shoot him. Mr. Joestar gives JoJo a ring from his mother. A policeman had wanted to run Dio's father out of town years ago because he tried to pawn Mrs. Joestar's ring. Mr. Joestar feels bad for Dario because he says in different circumstances he might be poor. And he also feels that Dio never knew a father's love. Mr. Joestar knew all along Dario didn't try to save him in the accident long ago. He asks that Dio be buried by his father. So at this point, they all think Dio has died because the policeman shot him.
Yes.
Mr. Joestar dies. Dio has disappeared. Dio kills the cop by cutting off the top of his head. He has turned into a vampire and calls for JoJo. They all freak out. The mask was left behind. They shoot him in the head, but he continues coming closer and enjoys tasting his own blood. He drains a man with his fingers. JoJo deduces Dio is no longer human. JoJo grabs a spear. JoJo says the mask unlocks the potential of the brain. The slain policemen come to life like zombies. JoJo attacks their heads with the spear. Dio grabs the spear with his hand, and JoJo realizes he is immortal. Dio uses the spear on JoJo's shoulder. JoJo hides, but Dio sniffs him out from behind a curtain, but when he grabs it, he is engulfed in flames. However, Dio is able to heal faster than he burns. JoJo climbs and Dio just walks up the wall. JoJo asks for his father's help one last time. JoJo and Dio fight and JoJo's life flashes before his eyes. JoJo wants the fire to grow hotter so he can throw Dio in. He is willing to die if it means also killing Dio. Dio pushes him into the fire, but JoJo uses his belt to hang on and stabs Dio with the knife that killed his father. JoJo cries for power from his father. Dio is stabbed through by a statue when he falls. Dio burns up. Supposedly. JoJo somehow lands away from the house alive, but it is fully engulfed in flames. At the end, the apothecary digs out the mask from the ruins, but Dio grabs his hand with his claws. We think. I wasn't sure if that was the apothecary and then it was a claw, but
Yeah, it was the apothecary.
we think it's Dio still alive.
Yeah. I guess one thing I want to say is that JoJo does finally get his apology from his dad about like how he treated him worse than Dio. He does that before he dies. And then Speedwagon says how much he normally like detests rich people, but he thinks that like all the Joestars are like good down to the core.
Yeah, the Speedwagon guy, I mean, he just sort of came out of nowhere, and I'm not sure why we're listening to him or trusting him, but uh, like, how does he know people are good or bad?
Yeah. In very anime fashion, they fought and then after the losing the fight, they became besties.
Yeah, I don't know if I've really heard that, like, in real life happen too much.
Yeah. That's kind of a theme in JoJo. Like, you think someone is a bad dude at first, but then after they get through their first little quarrel, you find out that they're actually really chill, and then they become like lifelong allies or something.
So I'm not, I guess I'm kind of just looking over the summary again, just thinking that I kind of just assumed Dio wanted the Joestar fortune, and I thought before it would have made more sense to kill JoJo first, because otherwise they would have to split the fortune.
Right.
But then with what he's done here, being caught poisoning Mr. Joestar, and then using the mask to turn into a vampire, and then with, at least the house completely being destroyed, I'm not sure what his goal is anymore. I mean, I'm sure he still hates JoJo and wants revenge, but
Yeah.
his goal has got to be different now, I think.
Yeah, I think at this point he really just wants to take out JoJo and like create as many minions as he can. And I kind of noticed also, right before the fire starts, Dio can't find them, and he finds them by smell, but he can't seem to see them. So does he like not have vampire dark vision? I don't know if maybe he just couldn't. I mean, obviously they were behind a curtain, but is that just not a thing in JoJo that vampires have dark vision? Who knows?
And is everyone who is killed by him turned into a vampire, even if he doesn't drain their blood?
I'm not totally clear on that myself, actually.
Like, does he have, like, what is it, like some of the zombie movies, like one little drop gets in their eye,
Yeah, like
or
28 days
something, so like, or sometimes people can be infected just by a scratch from something. So like just anything, because he cut the one guy's head, like the top of it off, but I don't know that he drained that man. I'm not sure if he came back to life, but
Yeah, I'm not sure either.
I don't think he had time to bite or drain all of those men, and they came back to life.
Yeah.
And then he seems pretty unkillable right now.
Yeah, the vampires in JoJo are just very powerful.
I guess the sun, right? The sun can
Yes.
do it,
Yes.
but not even like just a huge fire, it seems like.
Alright, so I'm gonna talk about the next episode, which is Overdrive. It's been 3 days since the fire, and JoJo is recovering from his wounds. Speedwagon hopes that JoJo does not give up on the world, even though JoJo has lost everything. Speedwagon notices a lamp burning in JoJo's room and sees a young woman tending to his burns. Her fingers are cracked and bleeding, and Speedwagon deduces that she's been caring for him around the clock. JoJo wakes up and speaks to the young woman, who reveals herself to be Irina Pendleton, his childhood sweetheart. Speedwagon retreats, saying she makes a better Florence Nightingale than he would have anyways. I feel like he seems like a little bit jealous about that. Irina kind of like faints or falls as she's talking to JoJo and catches her with a still broken arm. Speedwagon thinks that JoJo won't be lacking a reason to live after all. Meanwhile, Dio, with the help of the guy who he bought poison from, according to the Wikipedia, his name is Wang Chan, they drain the blood from Jack the Ripper and turn him into one of his zombie thralls with his mind-controlling abilities. The next day, JoJo searches the debris of the manor for the stone mask but doesn't find it, so he decides to go on a walk with Irina instead. During the walk, they meet a mysterious mustachioed man eating a sandwich, Will Antonio Zeppeli. His name, of course, is a reference to Led Zeppelin, the Zeppeli part anyways. I'm not really sure where the Will Antonio comes from. Zeppeli immediately jumps into the air and seemingly attacks JoJo, punching him in the diaphragm. His finger impales itself into JoJo's lung, stopping his breathing, but healing JoJo's broken arm. Zeppeli is a martial artist specializing in Haman energy, and he wants to teach JoJo how to be a Haman master to help defeat Dio. He demonstrates the power of Haman for JoJo and Irina by taking them to a pond and smashing a rock that a frog is sitting on with a shockwave. The shockwave passes through the frog harmlessly but splits the stone in half. It's sort of explained that Haman energy is as powerful as sunlight and is used by controlling your breathing, making it a strong offense or defense against vampires. Zeppeli reveals to JoJo that Dio and the mask were not destroyed that night, and Dio will come back to finish the job. At one point, Jonathan grabs a branch on a nearby tree, and as he does so, causes flowers to bloom on the tree branch. Zeppeli says that JoJo has great potential as a Haman user. Dio, on the other hand, is draining people of their blood to gain back his strength and feeding the scraps to his betrothed, Jack the Ripper. He's like taking up residence in this mansion, and he's staying there while he heals. JoJo trains under Zeppeli for a week, and as they take a break, Zeppeli tells JoJo why he knows so much about the stone mask. His father was a scholar, and they went on an expedition to Mexico and discovered the mask in some Aztec ruins. On the ship ride home from Mexico, one of the men gave into his curiosity about the mask and put it on. The man killed everyone on the ship except for Zeppeli, who escaped into the water. The vampire pursued Zeppeli into the ocean, and just before Zeppeli was about to be killed, the sun came up. As the vampire disintegrated in the sunlight, Zeppeli realized it was his own father. Zeppeli teaches JoJo a technique called a zoom punch, where I believe he dislocated his shoulder and sent Haman through it to punch further. At least I think that was in this episode. I know he dislocates his arm and does a punch like that at some point. I hope it is this episode. Then Speedwagon shows up and announces that Dio has been spotted in Win Knight's lot, where a bunch of people have gone missing recently. The only way to the town is a tunnel through a mountain, so they take a carriage through it and are attacked by Jack the Ripper, who murdered and mutilated the carriage driver and the horses. He unleashes scalpels from within his body at JoJo, Speedwagon, and Zeppeli, but Zeppeli uses Haman to deflect the knives with his wine, turning them back at Jack. He kicks Jack the Ripper with Haman and melts half of his face off. Jack leaps away and grabs a blade from the ceiling of the tunnel, which acts as the lever to a secret passageway that he escapes through. Zeppeli then hands JoJo a glass of wine and tells him to defeat Jack the Ripper without spilling a single drop, or he will abandon JoJo here and now, even if he utterly defeats Jack. JoJo goes through the secret passageway into a corridor where he's set upon by Jack. JoJo realizes that he needs to extinguish his torch because he keeps giving away his position. When he focuses on the wine in the glass, he discovers that he can use Haman to turn ripples in the wine into a shockwave, which he sends into a nearby wall by punching it. The shockwave goes through the wall and into Jack, who is waiting for JoJo around the corner. It hits Jack the Ripper dead on, knocking him into the other wall, and he disintegrates from the sheer power of Haman.
I don't really have a whole lot to say, I guess. The Zeppeli guy, I'm just kind of surprised he's like expecting JoJo to just have all control of Haman already, and
Yeah, it's only been a week.
Jack the Ripper. I mean, I guess he's new to being a vampire too, but still, he's been a killer before that, and he's just like, no, yeah, go face him, and you can't drop the wine, and kind of uncool.
Yeah.
And then just I guess calling Dio's the vampires he's made they're zombies, which to me zombies are something completely different than vampires, but here zombies are vampire minions, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I would think of them just as like thralls and not like zombies, because zombies are more like they want to eat your flesh and your brains.
But they've used the word zombie a couple different times.
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
I guess one piece of trivia I do have about Zeppeli is I guess at the time in Shonen Jump, if there was a character with a mustache, he was evil. So Araki took like a risk by giving this guy who's supposed to be the mentor a mustache, which is wild.
Oh.
They're like, no, the audience isn't going to trust him. He has a mustache.
Well, then they should put a bunch of facial hair on Dio.
Give Dio some mutton chops and like a big ass ZZ Top beard.
Or like where the hair's trying to creep up almost to his eyes. So it's almost kind of like I don't know. I wrote down that the Hamen is ripple energy. So like do they have to have some sort of liquid that they draw from? Is it almost like he's got water powers? Is he like Percy Jackson? Is he invigorated by getting wet?
um, well, I feel like it kind of depends on the Holland user, like what they end up using. I feel like Zeppeli relies a lot on his wine, and then he did the thing in the pond, but they're able to, like, it seems like use like nature itself a little bit to fight and to able to like grow things with Holland, like JoJo when he grabbed the tree branch and it made some flowers bloom.
I mean, we saw him do that, but he didn't use that to like kick anybody's butt though.
Yeah,
So maybe there's several different types of powers associated with the Haman,
yeah.
I guess.
Yeah, it kind of just depends on the character and how they use it. I think though, just like obviously they can also when Zeppeli did his little zoom punch, I don't think he used water with that. I think just like water and the like kind of help amplify the Hamon in a way.
I mean, I guess we are what, 70% water though too.
Yeah.
And there's blood in our bodies. I mean, it's also a liquid, so maybe that's some of it. I don't know. And then what you were saying before, them not being able to see in the dark, Jojo tosses his torch so as not to give away his position.
Yeah.
So perhaps they don't have good night vision.
I don't know why it's just weird for me to think of a vampire that doesn't have good night vision. I was like, huh?
I
I
guess
totally forgot about that part.
it would make sense for them if they don't come out in the daylight to have better night vision. But I guess I haven't really thought about vampires having good night vision.
I mean, I just think of them as like, like not like they'd at least have like the kind of night vision like a nocturnal animal might, like a raccoon or something.
Yeah.
So it just seems like he's retained maybe his normal amount of night vision that he would have as a human, or maybe it's only like a teeny bit better as a vampire. I'm not 100%.
The scene with when they go to that other city or whatever where there's been disappearances and their carriage stops and then Jack the Ripper crawls out of the horse was pretty gross.
Yes. It's like Rocky is like at least like I know he's a big dog lover, but I think a lot of the times he likes to show that a bad guy is really bad by like showing them like harm an animal. Like this guy is real fucked up. So that unfortunately is kind of a frequent occurrence in the show. It's like I mean, sometimes they might just like kick a dog or something, but usually they do not fare well. All right, so I think that is the end of our discussion here. If you've been enjoying the podcast and you'd like to hear more, hit that follow button. If you're watching this on YouTube, like, subscribe, comment. If you're on a podcatcher that allows you to leave a review, it would be super cool if you could leave us a review. Next time, we will be talking about the episodes The Dark Nights and Tomorrow's Courage. Until next time, I'll be the roundabout. Goodbye.
Goodbye.